Sometimes the truth has a way of surfacing at exactly the moment when lies become too heavy to carry. My name is Thomas, and I'm about to tell you about the day my entire world shifted in a divorce courtroom, not because I lost everything, but because I discovered just how deep my ex-wife's deception really went. Lisa and I had been married for 12 years when things started falling apart. Looking back now, I can see the signs I missed, but at the time I genuinely believed we were just going through a rough patch. She'd become distant, secretive about her phone, working late more often. Classic signs that I somehow convinced myself were just stress from her new promotion at the marketing firm. When she asked for the divorce 6 months ago, I was devastated but not entirely surprised. What did surprise me was how prepared she seemed. While I was still processing the end of our marriage, Lisa had already retained Catherine Walsh, one of the most expensive divorce attorneys in the city. She'd compiled financial documents, already had temporary living arrangements figured out, and seemed to know exactly how she wanted to divide our assets. I remember sitting in my empty house that first night after she moved out, wondering how she'd gotten so organized so quickly. I chalked it up to her being naturally methodical. It was one of the qualities I'd always admired about her. Lisa was the type of person who planned vacation itineraries months in advance and had our taxes done by February every year. The weeks leading up to our court date were brutal. Lisa's demands were aggressive. She wanted the house, half my retirement accounts, and substantial alimony despite her own successful career. Through my attorney, Marcus Chen, I tried to negotiate, but Walsh was inflexible. It felt like Lisa was trying to punish me, though I couldn't understand why. Our marriage hadn't been perfect, but I'd never been unfaithful or abusive. I'd supported her career moves even when it required us to relocate twice. The morning of our hearing, I sat in the courthouse corridor watching Lisa conference with her legal team. She looked confident, almost smug. Catherine Walsh had brought an associate and a paralegal, an expensive show of force that made my stomach turn. Marcus tried to reassure me that judges see through these tactics, but I felt outgunned. When we entered the courtroom, Judge Patricia Reynolds called our case. She was known for being thorough and fair, which gave me some comfort. Lisa's team went first, presenting their case for why she deserved the majority of our marital assets. Walsh was polished and aggressive, painting me as financially controlling and claiming Lisa had sacrificed her career advancement for our marriage. It stung to hear our relationship described so coldly, but I tried to stay focused on the facts Marcus had prepared. Then something strange happened. Walsh was presenting evidence about our joint savings account, explaining how Lisa deserved compensation for her contributions to the household economy. She had a thick folder of bank statements and was referencing specific transactions from various dates. "Your Honor," Walsh said, shuffling through papers, "my client has documentation showing systematic financial contributions dating back to—" She paused, flipping through more documents. "Dating back to January 2019, when she began preparing for this inevitable dissolution." The words hung in the air for a moment. January 2019 was 5 years ago. 5 years before Lisa had even mentioned being unhappy in our marriage. Marcus shot me a look. Judge Reynolds raised an eyebrow. Walsh seemed to realize her mistake immediately. Her face went pale as she glanced at Lisa, who looked like she'd been slapped. "I'm sorry, Your Honor," Walsh quickly corrected. "I meant to say January 2024, when my client began documenting financial disparities in the marriage. But it was too late. The damage was done." And Marcus pounced. "Your Honor, I'd like to request clarification on counsel's statement regarding January 2019, Marcus said, standing. "Are we to understand that Mrs. Anderson began preparing for divorce proceedings 5 years before she informed my client she was unhappy in the marriage?" Judge Reynolds leaned forward. "Ms. Walsh, I'm also curious about this timeline. Could you clarify what your client was preparing for in January 2019? Walsh tried to recover, but she was flustered. "Your Honor, I misspoke. My client was simply being financially responsible by maintaining detailed records." "For 5 years?" Judge Reynolds asked. "Records specifically related to a potential divorce that wasn't filed until 6 months ago." That's when Walsh made her second critical error. Instead of backing down, she decided to double down. "Your Honor, my client is a prudent financial planner." When she recognized that her marriage was showing signs of instability in early 2019, she began protecting herself by documenting assets and creating financial security. Lisa was staring at her attorney with obvious panic. Even I could see that Walsh was making things worse with every word. Marcus stood again. "Your Honor, if Mrs. Anderson was documenting assets for divorce purposes in 2019, I'd like to request that all such documentation be provided to the court. This would include any financial accounts opened, any assets transferred, any legal consultations, and any other preparations made during this 5-year planning period." Judge Reynolds nodded slowly. "Ms. Walsh, your client will need to provide comprehensive disclosure of any divorce-related financial planning dating back to January 2019. This court takes a dim view of extended financial manipulation in anticipation of divorce proceedings." The next hour was excruciating to watch. Under the judge's direct questioning, the truth began emerging. Lisa had indeed been planning our divorce for years. She'd opened Separate accounts had been transferring money systematically, had consulted with Walsh's firm multiple times over the past 5 years, and had even had our house appraised twice without my knowledge. But the most damaging revelation came when Walsh, clearly trying to justify her client's actions, presented what she thought was exonerating evidence. "Your Honor, my client's preparation was warranted given her husband's concerning financial behavior," Walsh said, producing another folder. She documented instances where Mr. Anderson made major purchases without consultation, including. She began reading from Lisa's notes, dated from 2019 through 2024, but instead of supporting Lisa's case, the notes revealed the calculated nature of her deception. She documented every argument we'd had, every financial decision I'd made, every time I'd come home late from work, all framed as evidence of my unfitness as a husband. Reading those notes was like discovering that someone had been building a case against me for half our marriage. Lisa hadn't been trying to save our relationship during those difficult years. She'd been documenting its failure for legal purposes. The judge called a brief recess. In the corridor, I could hear Lisa and Walsh having a heated, whispered argument. When we reconvened, Walsh looked defeated. Judge Reynolds addressed the court with barely concealed irritation. "This case presents a clear example of systematic financial manipulation in anticipation of divorce. Mrs. Anderson's 5-year planning period, combined with her failure to disclose this planning to her husband or attempt meaningful marital counseling, demonstrates bad faith." She continued, "Furthermore, Mrs. Anderson's transfer of marital assets during this planning period without her husband's knowledge constitutes financial misconduct that this court cannot ignore." The final ruling was nothing like what Lisa had expected. Instead of receiving the house and substantial alimony, Judge Reynolds awarded me the majority of our assets, including our home. Lisa's systematic deception had backfired completely. More importantly, the judge ordered Lisa to return all assets she'd transferred during her planning period, including money she'd moved to accounts I didn't even know existed. As we left the courthouse, Lisa couldn't even look at me. Her expensive legal team had cost her far more than just attorney fees. Their mistake had exposed years of deception and cost her the comfortable post-divorce life she'd been planning. Marcus and I walked to the parking garage in relative silence before he finally spoke. "In 30 years of practice, I've never seen someone's own attorney destroy their case so thoroughly," he said. "She planned for every contingency except her lawyer accidentally telling the truth." 6 months later, I'm rebuilding my life in the house Lisa thought would be hers. The financial recovery is ongoing. It's remarkable how much money someone can hide when they have 5 years to plan. But what I'll never fully recover from is the knowledge that for nearly half our marriage, the person I loved most was systematically preparing to leave me. The irony isn't lost on me. Lisa's meticulous planning and attention to detail, qualities I'd always admired, became the very tools that exposed her deception. Her own attorney's professionalism in maintaining detailed records dating back to the beginning of her scheme ultimately provided the evidence that secured my victory. I still wonder what our marriage might have been if Lisa had put half the energy she spent planning our divorce into actually working on our relationship. But I suppose that's a question I'll never have answered. Sometimes I think about that moment in the courtroom when Walsh accidentally revealed the timeline. How different things might have been if she'd simply said 2024 instead of 2019. It was such a small mistake, but it unraveled 5 years of careful deception in an instant. The truth has a way of surfacing, even when people spend years trying to bury it. In Lisa's case, her own legal team became the shovel that dug it back up. Today I'm grateful for Walsh's mistake, not because it won me money or property, but because it gave me something more valuable, the complete truth about who I was married to and the closure to finally move forward with my life.